Hi there. Day two. Okay, so today I just wanted to talk to you about the scales. Yes, the bathroom scales. Those things we don't like to come in and put ourselves on, and especially if the numbers go up. So I want to encourage you to make friends with your scales. I know it seems impossible, but there's a very good reason why. Because when you're on a program such as mine, or such as this one, is if your weight is going down on a regular basis, yeehaw. But if it isn't, there's a reason. And normally that reason is because you have got inflammation going on. And one of the main reasons that we have inflammation going on is that there's a food that you're eating isn't suiting your body. Even if you're on the carnivore diet, you might find that one or two foods could spark an inflammatory process. Now, the inflammatory process that could be going on is bacon. Sorry, bacon can be the problem, or pork products actually, but bacon especially because of the nitrates. So if we can use the bathroom scales, take the emotion out of it. Now, I know how hard that is. I've had a hate relationship with the bathroom scales for most of my life. And I know many of you will have too. And I just wanted to share with you a story that's probably quite common, and many of you will have experiences with the bathroom scales that could be similar to this, so you might relate. So when I was about 12, I had a friend who she'd been in a cast. She'd had both of her knees operated on, and she'd been in a cast for about 6 weeks, and she just had her cast removed. And this is quite important because if you think about it, she hadn't used her muscles for quite some time. Anyway, and of course she weighed less. But so her mother, in her wisdom, came into the room when we were mucking around and decided to weigh us both. Now, I weighed over a stone more than my friend. And my friend was a similar build to me. Look, we were same height and everything else. But basically, her mum said to me, "Oh, you're a big girl, aren't you?" And that sort of lodged in the back of my mind. I didn't really take much notice of it because it really wasn't in my remit. About a year later, I was about 13, and at school, it was a science class. About 30 of us in the class, co-ed, so boys and girls. And as an experiment, the teacher decided to weigh and measure us. And I was absolutely horrified and devastated, actually. I came in at the second heaviest in the class, heavier than the boys and all but one of the other girls. The other girl was the fat girl in the class, and I was then, after that, called fatty, even though I probably wasn't. And so that set me up on a trail of dieting, fasting, etc. So for the first few years, so it's probably about 6 years, no, 5 years, I dieted and yo-yoed. Of course, I was very hormonal, but also I was also a very, very fast runner. I used to run 200 and 400 meters for the school and for the county for the year above myself. I was very, very fast and I was very fit. Although I looked to myself as fat. And the reason was, of course, is the role models of the day were people like Twiggy. Now, you may not have known her, you might be too young to even know about her, but she was a model, flat-chested, flat bum, basically straight up and down, something I was never, ever going to be, no matter how much weight I lost. Just wasn't in my makeup. Anyway, I didn't take that on board. And then after sort of, I was about 18, I went vegetarian thinking I was going to lose weight. Far from it. Anyway, so more and more dieting, more and more starving myself, and my weight going up and down. Then fast forward, I went through all sorts of things. I went through when I reached the health part of my career in my mid-20s. My weight was going up and down. I was doing fasting, juice fasting, colonic irrigation, taking laxatives, etc. And basically my weight was more or less stable at that stage in my life. And so one day I was running a clinic in London, and in one day I had 3 supermodels come and visit me as a practitioner. The interesting thing was I didn't recognize them. Well, one of them looked similar to her photos, but they really didn't look like you thought they did. They didn't have beautiful skin. They had great bone structure, but they looked gaunt, and their hair was all falling out. And it turns out they all had a drug addiction habit. They all had either anorexia or bulimia, and they were basically really, really sick. And so as I was going home that night, I wondered why I had 3 models coming into me, all with the same ailments, really. And it hit me, Karen, you've got an eating disorder. And I never really realized it. And then my world sort of turned upside down. And after, not long after that, actually thinking about it, I started eating chicken. I was vegan at the time, and I just had to have chicken and never looked back, really. And so I still had an eating disorder, but I worked on it. I was very, very careful that I didn't go too obsessive, and that I didn't do fasting, and I didn't, especially juice fasting, because my blood sugars used to go up and down. And basically I ate a sort of keto diet, really, most of the time, except for when I went into huge stress, and that's when I put on all that weight. That's another story. But basically I realized that I had an eating disorder, and I had a really bad relationship with the scales because of it. And so in 2010, when I developed the program Fast Track to Health, I jumped on the scales for the very first time in I don't know how many years. And lucky enough, here in New Zealand, it's all done in kilos, whereas in the UK, it was all in pounds and stones. And so I didn't really realize how much I weighed in something that made sense to me. And it wasn't until I'd lost the 25 kilos that I lost, and I converted the weight that I was once I'd finished, and then I converted the weight to what I was when I started, and I was horrified at how much I had put on, and I didn't realize it. I really didn't realize it. And so now, if I put on weight, no matter how much, I go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what I've done. Because it can be something quite tiny in a way. Because when anyone's been on my program, if you've been on my program before, you do 40 plus days in what we call the elimination stage, which is where you lose the weight. And then in the next stage, we're finding out what your ideal foods are. And so this is where we use the bathroom scales. So in the first part, we use the scales every day to make sure the process is working. If it's not, what I do is I get people to look at what they've eaten, what's happened emotionally too, because that can impact it. And then we can work out what it is. And it's pretty easy, really, because it's so simple. And then when you get to the next stage, you introduce 1 food a day, and it's in a specific order. And if your weight goes up 600 grams or more, potentially that food can be very inflammatory for you. And this is really useful to know, because if you have that food all the time, then you're setting yourself up to be in stress mode all the time. And so then you start gaining fat rather than inflammation. Does that make sense? Because it really is so powerful, using scales as a tool for you rather than one that feels against you. So that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, because I think it's a really important component of the weight industry. Because if we realize how we can bring down inflammation, how we can let go of fat, how we can be healthy, and then we can discover what foods are our superfoods, not what we've been told, but what are our superfoods? Because I've found many of the so-called superfoods can be very inflammatory for some. And that brings me to a question that I was asked, and it's about coconut. Now, for many, coconut can be inflammatory, which is why it's not on the list. The reason that can be inflammatory, I believe, is because many of us are not set up genetically to absorb it. So if we look at most of us, many of us actually have blue eyes or hazel eyes, and that means that we do not come from equatorial zones. We come from cold climes. Cold climes, we have blue eyes, so we can absorb more light, and also to feed our pineal and keep it functioning. If you come from hot climes, you tend to have very dark colored eyes, and that's to stop too much light coming in to burn everything out. And so consequently, if you look at where things like coconut grow from, they come from very hot climes. And so the digestive tracts are going to be different from us from cold climes, if you see what I mean. So that's one of the questions we got asked this evening. And there's many other things that people ask me about, and I can't really remember all of them. But one thing I did want to also cover is chemicals and detoxification. Now, chemicals that we're exposed to on a hourly, minutely basis get absorbed via the skin, via the mouth, via the air that we breathe. And what happens is our bodies very often, because it doesn't know what to do with them, will put those chemicals away in our fat cells because they consider it to be safe there because it's hidden away. And so what happens when you start losing weight is you start to detoxify too. So you need to support your liver, your kidneys, and your lymphatic system. Liver, bitters, bitter foods, bitter, say something like Angostura bitters. So you can have sparkling water, lemon, and you can get some lemon juice and put some bitters in. Quite a nice drink before eating. And that way you're supporting your liver. There's many other things, of course, but this is simple things that you can do. Kidneys, drinking lots of water. Again, with lemon, that can be really beneficial. So if you think of your lemon, sparkling water, and Angostura bitters, you're supporting your liver and your kidneys. Lymphatic system, move your body. If you walk, the pump, say that's your heel, that's your lymphatic pump. So if you walk, then that gets the pump going. Now, if you are unable to walk, so say, for example, you've got an injury or something, then just tap your heels down on the floor like that. And if you're flying, it's a really good way of stopping you from getting swollen ankles when you're flying. So just tap your heels down. Or if you're working on a computer, just tap your heels down, because that'll help clear the lymphatics. So the lymphatics are your clearing system. So your body is eliminating all these toxins, and it goes into the lymphatic fluid before it gets eliminated. And so if you can keep the lymph moving, hugely, hugely beneficial. Now, one thing I really highly recommend is doing skin brushing. And you get a natural bristle brush, as stiff a bristle as you possibly can. And then you brush from the soles of your feet, and you brush upwards, not up and down, upwards because that's the flow of the lymphatics. So you're wanting to help, you're assisting the flow of the lymphatics. So up your legs and then along your arms towards your heart. And then you do here towards your heart. And then you don't do your breasts, it's too tender. And then abdominally, you do in a clockwise direction. That way, you can really assist your body in its detoxification pathways. It's a really, really beneficial way of helping your body help itself. There are many, many other things, but let's keep it simple. The other thing I would really like to talk about is cellular memory. Now, everything that has happened to us in our lives from birth and even pre-birth, there is a cellular memory within us. If you have had an emotional trauma, there will be remnants of cellular memory within your cells. And very often, if you hit a block on your weight loss, there will be an emotional, physical, or spiritual cellular memory. If you have got a weight goal, so just say, for example, your weight goal is 70 kilos and you always get stuck at 75, nothing you do gets you past that block. That will be cellular memory. And it's really important to work on removing it. Got lots of tricks about that, but I'm not going to go into that either today. It's because I didn't want to overwhelm everything. And also, I think you're going to be doing a lot anyway. So why not just hold that back, and you will be able to really appreciate the work you're doing. And I'm really, really grateful that you're here on this journey with me. I'm really loving this interaction. And thank you so much for all the questions. I will answer them on our Facebook group. And if you have more questions, just keep on asking, because as you might have gathered, I love this work. I love to be able to help everyone who needs help, because I've been there. I've done that. I've got the t-shirt and I'm learning all the time. And so this is why I do these journeys, because it is such a joy to be able to see you shift and change. So thank you very much for joining me this evening. Have a magical day, and I look forward to seeing what your weight is in the morning. Bye for now.